You ready to do this, Josh?
I'm ready to do this, Spence. Punch it, Chewy!
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot tonight is Josh Stapleton.
I'm really glad you didn't use that lover's line, because that'd be really awkward and weird, and I'd probably have a weird phone call from Mom.
We're two brothers and nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 69. We release every Thursday morning on iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts are available. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear hole. Josh, how are you?
Good. Hey, what's my favorite number?
69, dude! Excellent!
Yeah, doing really well. It's been a good couple of weeks, I guess you could say. I'm trying to remember when I was on here last. It's not been too long. But yeah, just got some really good things going on the home front, which I'm excited about. My wife just accepted a new position at her work, which is a rather exciting promotion for her. She's going to manage a whole floor on the hospital. So that's been great.
Is her official title like Overlord of Nursing?
I believe it's manager of the surgical unit, something like that. But
how about, let's just go with Supreme Overlord of Nursing.
Yeah, I mean that too. So that's kind of the unofficial title.
Right.
But so I'm really proud and happy for her. It's going to mean some interesting changes for me as well. I'm not quitting my job.
Sex change operation?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because at work, I'm going to be going to part-time, and I've had to use the term transitioning, asking about benefits and whatnot. But, so yeah, every time I use the term transitioning, I'm like, that's kind of a weird term, but that's what's kind of happening as far as changing from full-time to part-time. And then I'm going to, hop back into school and, kind of use this as a chance to start fresh. So excited about that. That's good. And all, I've had...
Let me ask you a question if you don't mind, because we haven't talked about this a ton, but what do you think you're going to go back to school and do, or what are you wanting to study?
Yeah, I have different ideas. I'm not really quite set. It might be along the MBA route, something that's a little bit more marketable. My current job, it's not a terrible job by any means, but it's not really something that I feel like I can really grow in. So, kind of leaning towards an MBA, not exactly sure quite yet.
I still think you need to go to pimp college, so when you graduate, you get a pimp chalice and a big cane with a big diamond on the top of it. That would be cool. I think that would be good.
Okay, where exactly have you seen a quote-unquote, and I know this isn't video, but I'm using the air quotes with my fingers, where exactly have you seen a pimp college?
Man, they're all over. It's called the streets. Come on, Josh, get with it.
Okay. I mean, I remember Warren G had a song. Oh gosh, I can't remember the album, but I know it was 1994 or maybe it was 95 when the album came out. It might have been the same album that Regulators was on, because they had a song called the 1994 Ho Draft, which I don't know. That always makes me think of pimps, but. No, not going to pimp college. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be weird to hop back into school after all these years. But I'm excited about it. Other things, got kids starting with soccer, so that should be fun. And I've been, been really hot on the flipping video games lately. Garage sale season hasn't quite started up here yet, but I've been hitting up the classified ads and had a really, really good week. I picked up a Nintendo GameCube from this guy. It was $30 for the GameCube and like 10 games and a Wavebird controller. And if you're not really familiar with the prices, a Wavebird controller goes for like $30 itself. So I was like, okay, this is sweet. You know, I've made my money from the second I picked it up. So,
Josh, just to go back real quick in case you and the Super Friends were wondering, 94 Ho Draft by Warren G is off the Regulate G-Funk Era album, which was released in 1994.
ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the 1994 Ho Draft. That's actually how it sounds.
Boop 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 ba doo doo.
Don't ask.
Womp 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 womp.
My rebel days in high school were filled with Wu-Tang Clan, Notorious B.I.G. and Warren G. So go figure. But anyways, so yeah, I picked up this GameCube. I sold it for, I think I sold it for $40. Got some of these games which are probably on average worth $10 a piece, and there's, I think I said 10 or 12 of them. And then the real gem of this, not that anyone wants to hear me talk about cords, but it came with composite cables. I always get composite and component. Composite are the ones that can do HD. Component, dang it.
Component.
I can never get it right. But it came with component cables, thank you. Not just your standard AV cables, but these component cables, I did not know they were part of the deal. The guy was just like, hey, I have both sets of cables. I'm like, oh, okay. And I didn't think much of it. And then I started walking out the door of this guy's house, and it hit me. These cables are crazy rare. There's no like Chinese knockoff. They're really hard to find. And so actually the eBay auction for it just ended tonight, and I sold those cables for $200.
Wow.
Which is actually on the low end because they're selling on average around $250, $260. So even though I was really excited I got $200 for them, I feel terrible even saying this, but I was kind of bummed. I'm like, dang it, they should have gone for more. But anyways, that was really exciting. It was a guy that was right on my way home from work, right in the town I live in. And then later that same night, a young couple that is going to school about an hour north of here at Utah State University, I found an ad of theirs. And I said, hey, you guys have a couple games I want, but you're kind of far away. Could you mail them to me? And he was like, mailing's going to be too expensive, but we'll meet you halfway. Well, I started looking over their games, and their listing said games $2 a piece or all 37 of them for $50. So I picked up all 37 of them, and there's some good ones in there that I've been selling off too. So anyways, that's been exciting. I get into collecting video games and selling them. I mean, I have almost as much fun flipping them as I do collecting them. So, you know, I might be the only person that cares about it, but for me, it's been kind of fun doing that, and it's gotten me pumped for garage sale season.
Are you saving up for something like with this extra money you're making? Like, are you saving up for something, or are you just putting it for like a rainy day fund? Are you like trying to fund a new purchases of video games? What are you doing with it? What's your plan?
Well, I've kind of had a twofold plan that's kind of turned into a onefold plan, if that's
Pimp College?
Yeah, Pimp College, yeah, true. No, I was trying to see if I could save up money to go to Married to the Games episode 300.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen with my wife's job change. It just doesn't look like it's going to be a reality. So my backup plan, I'm not really sure, but probably use it to buy video games, maybe even buy like a PS4 Pro. I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know. You know, so I'm thinking last year I made around $800 flipping video games, mostly off garage sale stuff. And this year, I mean, garage sale season hasn't even started, and I'm already, by the time I sell all the stuff I have, can have, you know, close to half of that probably.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It'll be fun. It's just kind of a little bit fun way to make some little side cash and to use it for nerdy stuff that doesn't cause anything to come out of the checkbook. But yeah, I don't want to talk about that forever because it is something that I really do like, and I could talk about it forever. But yeah, really exciting week. A lot of good things happening. What about you?
You know, this week it's been interesting. It's been fun. So of course, like I'm eating healthy, right? And I'm trying to be really good, and I'm exercising, and I've been doing that all year so far, and I've been really good. But this last Saturday, we had a poker night with my coworkers at one of my coworkers' house, and we do this every so often. But part of the, let's say, the fee, like the toll to do this at this guy's, my buddy's house, Jeremy's house, is that I have to make Chicago deep dish stuffed pizza, which is hard because I can't eat it, or I have to like not eat anything all that day in order to save up my calories so I can eat some. And so I made the pizzas this week, and this was the first time all year I've had pizza, and I had 2 big slices of pizza, and I was still under my calorie count, which I was really happy. And my weight hasn't gone up, so like I didn't throw things out of whack.
Right.
But man, I got to have authentic Chicago stuffed deep dish that I make, which I love it. I'm not trying to like humble brag on myself, but I've been working on that recipe, been working on making an authentic Chicago deep dish pie for so many freaking years. I feel like I've got it dialed in pretty well now. So I actually got to have some, and I was super happy. So like that was like a little moment for me. Like it was really kind of a big victory because I was able to eat something that I really wanted, not blow my calorie count, not blow my diet, not blow the progress, and it didn't set me back. And so I really enjoyed that. And on top of that, I won $110 off my coworkers that night.
Nice.
So
okay, well, two things here. First thing, when it comes to Chicago-style pizza, I can tell you the one time I've ever made it on my own. And that was 2005 when the Bears were facing the Indianapolis Colts in the Super Bowl.
I remember that well. Devin Hester returned the kickoff for a touchdown. Yeah, that was great.
And the pizza it actually turned out really well, but I had so many dirty dishes, and it took me like 4 hours to make it that I was like, nope, not ever doing this again. Like, it was delicious, and I love pizza. But I was like, if I want pizza, I'm just buying it. Because it was such a hassle. Second thing, okay, and this is, I too am trying to lose weight. I'm not, don't have any Superman effort like you, where I've lost, crazy amounts yet. But I've been in this weight loss competition at work. I'm 3 weeks in. I'm down 11 pounds, which, for 3 weeks in, I'm okay with. But for me, like, pizza is one of the things I really have to avoid because I don't have a stop, when it's like telling a crack addict, just take one hit. Cause I have people say all the time, like, oh, just have one slice or just have 2 slices, just keep it in check.
You can't.
I can't. And I don't know if it's a Chicago fat boy in me or what, but I just have to avoid it like the plague. But I think you've been at this a little bit longer, so you're probably in a better spot. I mean, I'm still in the early stages where I'm still having cravings and where every day is a struggle. And for the most part, I'm doing well, but I can't say every single day has been great. Like, weekends are really hard. But I don't know. I think from talking with you, it seems like you're kind of in a better spot where you're not in that big struggle stage. Right.
Yeah, the first few weeks were like a living hell because every day was like I had to keep telling myself, like, no, come on, you got goals, you want to be healthy, you want to see your kids grow old, you want to see grandkids. And like, now you're right. Now I'm kind of to the place where like,
but then that little devil on your shoulder's like, wouldn't you rather just eat pizza? Pizza's delicious.
You want this.
Kids are just going to cost you money, but pizza's forever going to be your friend.
Right. But a heart attack's forever in the ground. No, I'm at a place where I don't struggle on a day-to-day basis. I might have a moment in a week or maybe 2 moments in a week now where I'll see something like, dude, I really, really want that. But like my sugar cravings, because I haven't had any sugar since January 1, so technically December 31st. I haven't had any sugar, so I don't have sugar cravings anymore, which has been great. But there's times where I see people eating stuff and it's like, heck yeah, I want a bite of that ice cream.
Right.
But, or maybe not ice cream because that's not really true. I mean, it's been more like things like pizza, or I see people eating, like a big like chunk of like, we went out to dinner for Breeda's birthday and like the people we were out with, like they were eating like the bread and putting like the like garlic butter on it. That looked delicious. I would have loved to have had a bite of that. But I just know that like I'm doing certain things and I don't want to give in because I'm seeing real progress.
Right.
Today I got a pair of pants that's 3 sizes smaller than what I've been currently wearing, and it fits me perfectly.
Yeah,
which
that's
means,
awesome.
which means here probably in a couple months they're going to be real big and loose, and it's going to be using my belt to hold them up again. But that's okay. Like, that's a real good problem to have.
Yep.
So, but I 3 sizes smaller, man. That's like incredible. I've gone down a size in shirts. I'm seeing change. I'm feeling change. I'm sleeping better, and so yeah, I'm not willing to risk. I've got that little thing in the back of my head now that says like, yeah, that looks good, but you don't want to blow your progress. You don't want to do that because you're making real changes and you've got a real goal and you're working towards it and you're making progress and you don't want to see that. So it's almost kind of like I've kind of like gamified like my way of thinking towards things. So, but yeah, so like, but it was nice. I did get to eat some pizza this weekend. And if you ever want my recipe and I can kind of show you how I do it, you don't make as many dirty dishes. I mean, you still do some dirty dishes. But it's pretty legit. And,
I want the recipe and I don't want it because
right.
because I'm at that stage where all it takes is one bad day to turn into one bad weekend to turn into, yeah, I'm done. So I'm definitely not in the stage that you're at yet, but I'm trying to get there, and it definitely is a battle. I mean, I've been through this a number of times, and I've been successful at times and had other times where I haven't been successful, but I'm kind of at the point now where it's either lose weight or buy bigger clothes. And I'm too cheap to buy bigger clothes, and I hate clothes shopping. I hate clothes shopping, period. I'd rather wear old clothes for years and years until my wife says, you need to get some more clothes. But
Amazon's nice because you can pick out something that looks like you'd like it, to find the right size. It comes to your house. If it doesn't fit, you just put it back in the bag, send it back, and it's like, nope, I return. I need a smaller size or a bigger size. You don't got to go to the store. You don't got to use the little booths and those crappy mirrors and the crappy lighting.
I don't use them anyways. I drive my wife, Steph, I drive her crazy when we go clothes shopping because she's like, you need to go try it on. I'm like, no, it's my size. We're good. Let's go. And I don't know if that's just a typical guy thing, but it drives her bonkers. That, I just want to grab something and get out of there.
See, I don't even clothes shop with my wife anymore.
Well, I haven't in a long time, but
yeah, I mean, for a lot of different reasons, but yeah. Anyway, other than that, like we've been taking the boys out on some walks. We're trying to get them sleeping again through the night because I don't know what it is, but Jackson wants to wake up at 5:30 in the morning every morning now, or 5 in the morning some mornings. So we're trying to take them on walks at night and like tire them out a lot so they'll go to bed. Last night it did. I mean, last night they slept from about like 9:15 to about 6 a.m., which is the longest they've had straight. Usually they're not going to bed now till closer to 10 and then waking up at 5. I mean, that's just not enough for a 3, almost 4-year-old. They need more sleep. And he's grumpy, man. That dude, I love that kid, but man, he is grumpy when he's tired.
Maybe he's cold, since you keep your house like an ice cube. I know people listening can't tell, but I intentionally came over here wearing a sweatshirt because I'm like, yep, going over to Spencer's house, better wear some layers.
Dude, well, the funny thing was, Brita says, hey, turn on the heat, and bump up the heat. So like she turned it up to like 70 degrees. But I was like, dear, he's going to be down in the basement, and we have all the heating vents closed off down there because we're normally never down there during the winter at all. And I was like, so all you're doing is heating the upstairs. And she was like, nah, well, that works for me.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, man, everything's been real good. Just, it's been a busy week. It's been a crazy fun week. Like I said, got to have some pizza, got to win some money off my coworkers, had a fun time. Getting out with the boys, doing stuff, and happy to be back here in the Fortress of Nerditude, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back here as well. I do have a question for you, though.
Shoot.
What are you doing with your life?
I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go along.
I ask because I'm down here in your basement, and as we're getting ready to record, you're working on some of the settings on the computer, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna go pop out in the hallway and look at some of your old video games. You have PSP games and original Xbox games. You don't still have a PSP or an Xbox, do you?
I still have a PSP.
Okay, well at least you have the PSP. But I'm seeing these original Xbox games. I'm like, dude, You have a brother that flips games. Ask me some questions. Let's get these things on eBay. Let's get you a couple bucks. Unless you're holding on to them for sentimental reasons.
You know, as I recall, every season when you flip games, I say, hey, I got a whole bunch of really old games. You should come take a look.
Ever said that?
Every single time, every single year, the start of every single year, I'm like, I got a bunch of games. You should come flip them for me. And you're like, yeah, I'll come take a look. And then nothing.
No, you brought over a Dance Dance Revolution mat and said, see if you could flip this, which I still have, and I haven't had any interest in it. But
I don't want it back.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of funny because I just unhooked the PS3 this week because I got a new Harmony remote, and it's got like a little hub so that I can control it with an app on my phone, basically, and I can control all my devices. But in order to do that, I had to make some room, and I haven't used the PS3 in forever. Pretty much since I got my PS4, my PS3 has been, collecting dust. And so I think I'm going to sell my PS3 and all my PS3 games because I just don't play any of it.
I wouldn't do it, but okay.
Well, why though? If I don't use it,
someday you're gonna have the. Believe me, I've sold things before, and man, I sold my Xbox 360 a couple years ago, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna play Xbox 360 anymore. It's next gen, and you know what I've been doing for the last 2 years? I've been picking up Xbox 360 games. I picked up a Gears of War Special Edition Xbox 360. And you know what? What was it? Saturday night, I stayed up till 1 a.m. playing WWE 2K14.
Yeah, I don't have that collector bug though, like you do. And most of the games that I wanted on the PS3 ended up getting re-released for the PS4, and I've got them on the PS4.
That's true. There are a lot of remasters. I don't know. It's I never used to be the collector, but now I've totally got that itch. And to me, it's at finding the needle in the haystack. It's just so much fun. I have more fun probably chasing down a lot of these games. I don't want to say more fun than playing them because I do still play them. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And speaking of Harmony remotes, I got to tell you a quick story. So you ever just lose something and it just drives you bonkers? Like you tear the whole house apart and you just cannot find it, right?
Yep. All the time.
We lost our remote for our new TV this last week or 2 weeks. Still haven't found it.
The brand new TV?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the big screen 4K, beautiful TV, all of a sudden the remote was gone. Now, my 1-year-old is crawling and he likes to put things in the trash. So I don't know if he threw it away. I don't know what happened to it, but literally I was checking couch cushions, lifting up bed mattresses, like tearing my house apart. Still haven't found it. Just went to the store and just bought just a replacement remote. It works fine. No big deal. However, I had the thought, I have my Harmony remote downstairs in my basement. Maybe I can just reprogram that and use that for a while. I went down to the basement. I could not find the frickin' Harmony remote anywhere. And at this point, I'm just getting ticked off. So Steph says, maybe you should shake the couch cushions downstairs. Sometimes it really gets deep in there. And I'm like, well, I've already pulled all the cushions off.
That's what she said.
So I've pulled off all the couch cushions and I just dug through everything. Couldn't find anything. So then finally I tip the love seat over and I hear thunk thunk. I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, I bet that's it. So down in the very bottom where that fabric gets tacked on.
Yep.
I ripped a hole with my fingers, dug my hand up in there, and sure enough, out comes a dusty Harmony remote. Okay.
Nice.
And then I shake the couch again and I hear another thunk thunk. And I'm like, what in the crap is down in there? Well, Andrew, my oldest son, has like a 3-foot Legend of Zelda sword that's been missing for months.
Whoa.
It was down in there. So he was really happy. I was really happy. We found everything we were looking for. So
our couches, if you tip them up, they have like a little zipper. So you can like open up like a little, like a little window kind of and open it up because of that very reason that things can like fall into the couch. So I don't have to like rip anything, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just a little hole and it was in the very bottom where no one will ever see it. But I'm sure I could have probably, figured out another way to fish it out. Because if it was able to fall down, I could probably get it back. But I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to make a little tear here.
That's crazy. Yeah, the Harmony remote we got actually was like it's $120 for the remote and this hub, but it was on sale for like $60 on Amazon. So I got it because just the hub alone sells for like $80.
Wow.
So I got that, and I can now control my TV with my phone or the new remote. And the new remote's kind of nice because it doesn't have like the little LCD window on it, and it's a little more simple, but it still does all the things I need it to. So, and it's sleek. I like the feel of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're good remotes. I like them.
Yep. So anyway, Josh, let's get moving on. Let's get to some Rebel Intelligence. What do you say?
Meh, I guess.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Josh, we are into Rebel Intelligence. One of the first things I kind of wanted to talk about, and I think we should kind of talk about it right up at the top. Obviously, this last week, Stephen Hawking died. And Stephen Hawking, I'm sure most of you know, but if you don't, Stephen Hawking was an English theoretical physicist. He was a cosmologist. He was like an author. He'd been on like boards, and was a professor and taught at I think Cambridge. He was really, really well known because of some of his theories, right? Obviously, he kind of talked about the whole idea of like black holes and the Big Bang, and some of that sort of stuff that most people know. I remember though Stephen Hawking really well because Dad had a book of his called A Brief History of Time that was like a bestseller. This thing was on the bestseller list for 237 weeks.
Yeah.
And I've never personally read the book. I've heard it's great by a lot of people, and I know Dad loved it. Dad said it was very, very kind of influential on him. He loved that book when it came out, which was in the early 80s. I want to say it was 1981-ish, maybe, somewhere around there. Anyway, he had a motor neuron disease, like ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, that basically gradually paralyzed him over the decades. Eventually, he lost his voice when he had to have some sort of tracheotomy, and that pretty much lost his voice. So he had to use a synthesizer to talk in the later years. But he finally succumbed to his illness. The interesting thing though is when he was diagnosed with it, I think it was back in the, I want to say 1950s. And for everyone else that got that disease, they basically said it's a 2-year, you've got 2 more years.
Right.
And after 2 years, you're going to be done. And Stephen Hawking went to live on for another 50 years after that or more. So maybe it was 60s, but lived more than 50 years past that and ended up dying,
Was he 76?
Yes. Right? Yes, I believe so. So anyway, died this last week, 76 years of age. And so it's just it in the realm of science, and then of course science fiction, which science fiction is based off of science and the love of science, right? He was just a big personality. He was controversial at times, with some of his scientific theories that he presented, and that shook things up, but then also kind of what he would say. He would also say kind of controversial things at times. I think sometimes maybe to get a rise out of people, but sometimes just to kind of shake up preconceived notions. Anyway, we lost him this week. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends and all those in the science community that he touched.
Yeah, I definitely echo that same sentiment. And it's always impressive to see people that, despite of any limitations that they might have, that still, just persevere. And, what a contribution to society he made, where he could have easily just, given up and said, I'm not even going to bother. One of the things, and this is it's just a total side note, but one of the things that impressed me with him, years ago, he had an appearance on The Simpsons, and
right.
they could have just totally faked it with the synthesizer and said it was Stephen Hawking, but he actually wanted to record his own lines. So he did. So he definitely had a sense of humor about him as well. And yeah, you're right. We definitely lost a great one. So
Yep.
rest in peace. I definitely don't have a great transition for my story. More of a fluff piece here. But brace yourself. We've already had Full House come back. We've had another bunch of
Karate Kid's coming back in a
Karate Kid. Yeah. So among the titans of 90s TV shows.
Ooh, Titans.
One that I remember from the Nickelodeon days, Clarissa Explains It All, is coming back. So Melissa Joan Hart, which I don't know how old she is now, but definitely not a teenager anymore. I'm guessing she's probably late 30s, early 40s.
Probably.
Seeing as, I was watching that show as a kid and she was a kid. But she's coming back, and I think it's going to kind of have that same spin that Fuller House does, where DJ is now the mom type thing. I think Clarissa is going to be the mom on the show. How it's going to do, I don't think it's going to do nearly as well as something like Fuller House has done on Netflix. But the show is coming back, and whether her kids have people using ladders to climb up into their windows like she did with her best friend, or whether they kind of break down that fourth wall of talking into the camera. I don't know, but the show is coming back. Is this something that you would even check out, or is this just more, kind of an interesting side piece? What do you think?
Hard pass. Okay, here's the thing. Like, I've talked about like the Karate Kid thing. Like, okay, you're bringing back a TV show based off of, one great movie, one good movie, and one very forgettable movie. Oh, and then there was one with a girl. But it's
yeah, the one with the girl.
Well, I mean, there's Hilary Swank, the Hilary Swank version. It's a little Office reference. It's like something like that coming back. I'm like, is there really a demand? Is there really a need? Are people really going to watch this? Is this just a nostalgia grab? Okay, Full House was a massively huge hit. So right. I kind of see that. I don't remember Clarissa Explains It All being a massive, huge hit. I mean, maybe it was, but like it was on Nickelodeon, which is like back in those days. So super friends that are a little younger, let me tell you, TGIF, Thursday night, must see TV, NBC, CBS, ABC were like the big monsters back in the 80s and 90s. And then, of course, Fox got into the mix late 80s. They were the big monsters. Like, if you had a big popular show that, like, millions of people were watching, that was huge back then. Like, it wouldn't be just, like, a million people. It'd be, like, 8, 9, 10, 12 million people, like, consistently or more, because there wasn't as many options. But Clarissa Explains It All was a Nickelodeon show, so you only saw that if you had cable, which back then not everyone did. Like, that was not like a foregone conclusion like it kind of is today. So I can't remember anything about that show. I don't think I'm going to watch it. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't watched Fuller House, and I don't really have any intentions on watching that either.
I have watched a few episodes of Fuller House, but it's more so that my kids have been watching it, and I'll come in and kind of like, oh, what's this, and watch a few minutes.
Air quote, kids.
Yeah. No, they've watched, I think, all of them.
Really?
Yeah. Like, they really like it. And so I can see with Clarissa Explains It All, I could see it maybe being something that might be on in my house as something that maybe the kids would like, and maybe that I would view it as, okay, this is probably, I guess I'd have to check it out first, but I'd be surprised if it isn't kid-friendly. So as far as, hey, if you guys want to watch something that I'd feel comfortable with, I'd be fine with them watching something like that. And that's probably how it'll get the viewership in my household. But like you're saying, there definitely is a difference between something like Full House, where, if I just do the, like everyone knows, like it's the beginning of Full House. You hear that.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you the jingle to the beginning of Clarissa Explains It All. I'm sure if I heard it, I'd recognize it. But
I think it was 94 Ho Draft by Warren G.
1994 Ho Draft, Clarissa with the first pick. No, I don't think that was it. But anyways,
Speaking of things coming back from the dead, Josh, do you remember back in like the 90s, those little Tamagotchis? They were those little like little video games where you could have like a little virtual pet and you had to like feed it and like take it out for a walk and like try to keep that thing alive. And it was basically like a little keychain toy. Do you remember those at all?
I mean, vaguely, but I kind of want to say that was popular along the same time as Pokemon was getting popular. And that was, if I had my time frame right, that was kind of at a time where, I was still into games and everything, but I wasn't into that type of stuff. So I never had it, never was into it. But yeah, I remember seeing them around.
Yeah, so these things were like super big and like it just was like this little plastic egg with a little LCD screen that was like pathetic looking. But like people loved these things. Like, oh man, I tried to keep my Tamagotchi alive, blah, 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 blah. Well, apparently now they're going to come back, but they're going to come back in the form of like an app on your phone. So I don't know what it is. It just feels like there's this big like nostalgia grab right now for like 90s stuff that's kind of really starting to go full swing. And you can now have a Tamagotchi on an app on your phone. But let's be honest. Everyone that had those things eventually let those little pets starve to death and die. It's just going to be that. It's going to be a wasteland of little dead Tamagotchis on your phone. Do you really need to download that app to let something die? No.
Yeah, I can see though where this is. This is definitely coming, off the heels of the success of Pokemon Go. I mean, you see something like this. You see how there's a Harry Potter game in development. There's
a Jurassic Park. There's going to be a Ghostbusters. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not shocked by this because that's the world we live in where if something does well, there's going to be a million copycats. And so, yeah, it is what it is. I'm sure it'll make some money. But yeah, I don't see this as being any sort of lasting hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Not for me. Not for me.
Okay, so assuming you're done with that story, there's another one that I've kind of found interesting, and this is dealing with American Idol. Have you been watching the new season?
I stopped watching American Idol after maybe like the fifth, sixth season, maybe even seventh season, way back when, because to be perfectly honest, I got really tired of that sort of singing competition.
Right.
And so I stopped, but I do know that like Fox let it go and ABC picked it up, and so now ABC's trying to run with it.
Yeah, ABC's has picked it up. It's got all new judges, one of which is Katy Perry.
That's my girl.
Yeah, I know. And she's making waves, to say the least. So there was a contestant that was trying out, and they're just having their usual chit chat with the guy, and come to find out he's never had a girlfriend and never even kissed a girl. 19-year-old kid, and so she told him to come up and that to give her a kiss on the cheek, and right as he went for the kiss on the cheek, she turned her head and gave him a quick peck on the lips, and then he fell down kind of in shock.
I know that move well. I think I've used it a time or two in high school. Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about this is, I've seen the clip. It's not like they had some long, embrace, some intimate kiss. It was just a quick peck on the lips type thing.
You mean like the Righteous Brothers music didn't start swelling from the background, the lights dimmed down and a spotlight shone on them? It wasn't like that?
What? Friends dance to Endless Love in the Dark? No, there wasn't anything like that. But afterwards, he said, that he was a little, obviously a little caught off guard. And I don't know if the word was embarrassed, but there are people that are saying, hey, this is sexual harassment, and that he is a quote unquote a he too instead of a she too, or whatever. I guess just a me too, whatever you want to call it. And he's saying, no, that's not the case. He was just saying, hey, basically that it caught him off guard. I know I'm not quoting him word for word, but that was the essence of it. So here's the question. A lot of us are going to look at this and say, hey, this is really innocent. And, probably most guys are going to be like, look, he got a kiss from Katy Perry. What's the big deal?
Right.
And I totally get that. But I guess the question that you have to bring up is if it was Lionel Richie or a male judge and it was a 19-year-old girl, this would probably be a totally different story.
Right.
If a 19-year-old girl went to give Lionel Richie a little peck on the cheek and he turned and gave her a
all
kiss
night long, all night, all night, all night long, all night. Sorry.
So what do you think? Do you think it's a double standard? Do you think this is a case of the media making, the media and just people on the internet making a big deal out of nothing? Maybe a little bit of both?
So here's the thing, because that is a very interesting question, right? Because I know that movie you're talking about, right? The old, come give me a kiss on the cheek, and you turn at the last second, haha, surprise. Like, that's not like something new. It's not like, something Katy Perry just invented. That's been around for probably since like the 1930s. But you are right though, Josh, in saying if it was Lionel Richie or if it was an adult male judge, doing that to a 19-year-old girl, everyone and their dog would be outraged. And so I guess here's the question, is that harmless prank or unwanted, sexual assault or unwanted physical contact? I mean, no, not sexual assault.
And here's I guess where you just have to, if you're Katy Perry, I mean, you have to be careful, because what if someone really did be like, yeah, I didn't want that. I didn't like that, because he could, if he wanted, make a big stink out of this. And it's definitely on TV. It's not like she can deny anything happened.
Right.
I do think it is a little bit overblown, but I think it just is an interesting commentary, if nothing else, on just kind of the way different, gender roles are viewed. Sure.
Yeah. And it's something, I don't know, like I'm probably with you. It's a prank. Obviously, she was meant it as a prank, meant it as a joke. Am I going to say sexual harassment? No. Unwanted or unwarranted, unasked for? Yeah, probably. And in today's day and age where we have such a focus on trying to do the right thing and trying to, call out, things for what they are and, speak truth, this is probably not a prank that has any business being around much anymore, and definitely not by people who should know better, right?
Right. So here's my follow-up question. Spencer, are you trying out for American Idol?
Yes!
And are you going to tell her that you've never been kissed? She's like, but your wife's right here and you have 2 children.
Yeah. I hired them. They're actors to play my wife and children. I've never been kissed, Katie.
How many guys do you think are now going to try and say that line every time they see her?
Every single one.
Yep.
Every single one. Or upcoming years, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's a tough one. I mean, probably not the smartest choice.
Yeah. I guess I don't feel too bad for the guy though.
Right. Okay, Josh. I don't know. Did you ever watch Firefly?
No. I've seen Serenity, which I probably should not have seen before watching the TV show because I hated it, even though fans loved it. I just didn't know what was going on, basically.
So I love Firefly. For me, Firefly is one of those like sci-fi staples that if you haven't seen it and you're a sci-fi fan, it's something I think it's worth watching. I mean, it's written by Joss Whedon. This was after Buffy the Vampire Slayer, after Angel, before the Avengers. He knows how to write for an ensemble cast, and he's very, very funny. Anyway, Nathan Fillion, who a lot of people know, he was on the big TV show called Castle. He was Captain Malcolm Reynolds on Firefly and then in the Serenity movie. Well, here's the thing. He's making an upcoming cameo on a TV show on ABC called American Housewife, which I've never seen, don't know anything about it. But what's interesting is he's coming dressed up as Captain Malcolm Reynolds. He's wearing his brown coat. He's wearing the pants. He's got the gun on his hip. He looks like kind of a cool version of like a Han Solo with like a brown trench coat, basically. He's the captain of his own ship. But for some reason, he's doing a guest cameo appearance, but he's dressed up like Mal. And so, of course, all Firefly fans are talking about this thing, and they're super excited and they're super happy because they're hoping, something. It's one of those things where it was a TV show that was canceled way too early. And they kind of, towards the end of that season, they kind of messed around with the time slot, never really gave it a home. And that kind of always hurts a TV show. But basically, he's coming back. So if you're a big fan of Firefly or Serenity or a brown coat like I am, there is going to be a Nathan Fillion as Captain Mal sighting on TV shortly. It's just not going to be what we would hope it would be. But hey, something is better than nothing.
So that's what they're called, brown coats?
Yeah, so basically there was a big war, and it was kind of a war of independence. Basically there was kind of like, if you relate it to Star Wars, it's kind of like the Imperials. So it's basically like a big conglomerate, government's kind of taking over, and he's fighting for the independent sides to not be joined. And their uniform, they wore these kind of brown like trench coats, and so their colloquial nickname was Brown Coats. But
do they get along? Do they get along with the red coats?
I don't know.
USA.
So, yeah, you should go and watch that show. I mean, I can loan
it's
it to you.
Just one season, right?
It was one season. It's only 11 episodes because
I'll have to try
it got
that.
canceled. It's really good. It's worth it.
Okay, well, speaking of things that we haven't probably had anything new for a little while, Indiana Jones. Steven Spielberg announced just a couple days ago that they're going to start filming Indiana Jones 5 in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is probably going to come across with mixed reaction because I know so many people hated Indiana Jones and was it Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Nuke the fridge. Yeah.
Okay, I just have to say this because I know people ripped it. It was not the best Indiana Jones movie, but one thing that I've never understood is how Indiana Jones fans can accept someone ripping a heart out of a beating chest, or beating heart out of a chest, how they can accept, seeing an ancient Templar just sitting around waiting for him to come and drink out of a chalice. They can accept all these things, but yet, you have them jump in a fridge when there's nukes, or you have aliens and everyone's like, oh no, too far.
Well, I think
where's the line?
I think a big part of that though, Josh, is because the idea of the Indiana Jones movies, as George Lucas and Steven Spielberg kind of originally had this idea, was that it was supposed to be kind of rooted in kind of the pulp radio shows from like the 1920s and 1930s, like the serials. You kind of follow an adventure along and kind of follow an adventurer. And so like all of their, in the, the first three indie movies, they're all kind of supposed to be kind of rooted in some sort of like human mythology, right? Because you've got the Ark of the Covenant in the first one. In the second one, it's about this temple down in, I can't remember, Brazil somewhere, South America.
Didn't the Ark of the didn't they open it up and like all these like spirits fly out of it? Or
no, they don't really show, but it's supposed to be the power of God, and like the Nazis open it up and basically like it melts their faces and they all kind of like melt to death or whatever, because it's supposed to be the power of God because they're not worthy to handle it, right? But then in the third movie, it's supposed to be, the chalice, the cup of Christ, and so it's supposed to be like rooted in like Christian mythology. So you've got all this mythology rooted in like ancient civilizations in these first three movies. And then they come up with the fourth movie, and instead of doing that, they're like, and we're going to root this in outer space aliens that have come to the planet. And that just seems like a real big stretch, especially because this is supposed to be like the 1950s in that movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's not my favorite Indiana Jones movie, but I didn't think it was nearly as bad as everyone wanted it to be.
It's the worst of the four.
No, Temple of Doom is horrible.
No. See, for me, my order best to worst is Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Last Crusade, Temple of Doom, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I don't. Temple of Doom for me is just unwatchable. From Steven Spielberg's ex-wife that plays the female lead, and she's a horrible actress, to Short Round, who is just
come on, Short Round's
so
lovable,
obnoxious. Dr. Jones,
Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones.
Oh, I can't stand that. Like, I just want to kick that kid like a kickball. Just watch him fly.
You want to punt him?
I want to see him go deep into the outfield.
Oh wow!
But anyways, and then also they did also say, no shock here, but I always get his name wrong, but Shia LaBeouf is not going to come back.
Goodness.
As Mutt Williams, which I think they were grooming him to be the new Indy, but that is not happening.
Because A, Shia LaBeouf is crazy, and B, he was horrible in that.
Yeah. So he is done there.
So speaking of Steven Spielberg, I'm super, super, super excited for Ready Player One that's coming out. I've read the book, and just like recently, they've released a whole bunch of like movie posters for Ready Player One, but they're all like old movie posters, like Back to the Future or The Matrix or like Indiana Jones or what was it, like Labyrinth, but it's with the characters from Ready Player One. But what I thought was really interesting is that we know that this movie, if you've read the book, that this movie is going to be based in 80s history, because the idea is the creator of this virtual world dies and he leaves his fortune to those that can find it and that are worthy of it. So what's really interesting is Steven Spielberg was asked some questions about like what kind of references, what kind of cameos, what kind of intellectual properties did you try to get in here? Because this movie is going to have a ton of other companies' intellectual property. And so it took the movie production like years to secure some of the rights to some of these things. Cause you got to negotiate. If you want to use our characters, you can only use them in these kind of settings, or you can only do this or do that. And so apparently like to try to get all the intellectual property and pack it all in took the people that were making Ready Player One like years and years to do it. But of course, Steven Spielberg wants to get some Star Wars references into this. And of course, Disney owns Star Wars.
Right.
And so originally he was saying like, yeah, I really didn't get what I wanted. I wanted some Star Wars Easter eggs to kind of put in it. But recently they've come back and they've corrected it and said, actually, Steven Spielberg did say that Disney did allow Star Wars references into Ready Player One. So there are going to be some things, but that's just kind of an interesting thing to me to think about. Like, I mean, we obviously see movies and there's like product placement, right? Like you remember in the 1978 Superman movie, you see like there's this like shot of like the Kent farmhouse like table in the kitchen, and you see like a box of Cheerios there, and like it kind of shows the Cheerios and kind of like the bowl and the milk, and then the camera pans slowly up, and then you're kind of looking through the kitchen window and you see Clark Kent like walking kind of off into the field as the sun is rising. Obviously, that's like a huge product placement for a box of Cheerios, right?
Right.
And so the people making the movie, Richard Donner, whoever else, has to work to get that and secure that, which means they're going to get some money to help make the movie. But on something like Ready Player One, where it's going to be tons and tons and tons of 80s music, 80s movies, 80s like video games, like all these references, that would take a long time to secure all the rights for that, I would imagine.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'll never forget going to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all the Pizza Hut references.
Yep.
Some of these movies have become, and TV shows too, have become more and more shameless in their, product placement. I can't remember if it was Alias. There's some show I was watching years ago where they were having a scene in the car and they kept like zooming in on like the Ford logo, and it was like, oh, come on. Like it felt like I was watching a commercial.
I mean, obviously you remember Wayne's World where they kind of lampoon that, and he's he's wearing his Reeboks. He's like, look, new print, little, yellow, different. Like they kind of made like a 45-second commercial for a bunch of different products. It's a thing. So I'm really excited for Ready Player One. We're gonna go out and see it at its opening weekend, Brita and I hope it's as good as the book, or at least if the changes they'll inevitably have to make for whatever reason. will be there. I do know one big change is that in the book, there's a Japanese character from like an anime called Ultraman. And apparently Steven Spielberg couldn't get the rights to use that because apparently like it's in like lawsuits and like it's in court in Japan. And so he couldn't get rights to it because it's being heavily contested in court over there.
I thought you were going to say it's Rockman because that's Mega Man in the United States. But...
Nope. Yep.
Okay. So. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. I haven't read the book, and I'm sure if I had read the book, I'd be more hyped for it. But just on seeing the trailers alone, I don't think the trailers have been that spectacular.
I agree. I don't think the trailers were that spectacular or would make me, if I hadn't read the book, make me be like, this is amazing. I want to go see this. I want to go see it because I've read the books and I love I've read the book and I love that book. The trailer was enough to get me excited for it because I have the background of the book.
Right. Yeah, I've heard so many people say how much they love the book and how excited they are for it. So probably for those reasons alone, I'll probably try and trek out to the movie theater to see it. But just watching the trailer, it just kind of felt like every other, popcorn action movie where, stuff's exploding and they're in a car racing away. And I don't know, like, I'm sure the movie will be fine. But there wasn't anything in there that was like, okay, cool, I have to see this.
Right. Speaking of trailers, have you seen the latest Avengers Infinity War trailer?
Yeah, just actually watched it today for the first time.
That looks awesome.
It does. I'm excited for it. I think I've said on here before though that I've been having a little bit of Marvel fatigue.
Right.
But Black Panther was kind of what I needed out of a Marvel movie. It kind of it was one that I actually left and was like, okay, that was really good. So it's got me excited again. I didn't think. Oh gosh, I'm blanking out. But I guess the second Avengers, Age of Ultron.
Right.
I didn't think that was amazing. I thought the first Avengers movie was just excellent. I thought Age of Ultron was kind of boring.
I thought it was good, but it wasn't as good as the first Avengers movie.
Well, let me ask you this: do you know how many times you've seen Age of Ultron?
Probably 2 or 3, maybe.
Yeah, and I think I've maybe seen it like 1.5 times, maybe twice. The first Avengers movie I've probably seen
half a dozen,
10 times.
yeah, a dozen, yeah.
And so that's an easy way for me to say, okay, like I didn't necessarily hate it, but it was like, okay, I saw it and I'm kind of good. But yeah, Infinity War looks good. I've heard, and I guess you would know, but I've heard that they're going to try or that they're planning on making an Infinity War 2 eventually.
No, it's a two-parter. They filmed both of them at the same time. So
okay.
This one's going to come out in 2018, and then in 2019 will be the second part.
Okay, are they going to have movies in between it, or is it just supposed to be...
No, there'll be other movies that'll happen in between. So I think coming out this year, like Avengers Infinity War is the next Marvel movie. Then Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out after that. And
okay, so I guess my question is, if it's a two-parter, is it supposed to be two separate movies, or is it more kind of like a Lord of the Rings thing where it's just a continuing story?
My guess is it's a continuing story, and so my guess is any movies that are going to come in between those two movies are going to be out of sight of the chronology, maybe, of the...
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Right, because I know there's the Captain Marvel movie that's going to be happening, I think, in 2019, but she's a superhero from back in the 90s, and so her story's going to be back in the 90s, and so it's going to be like out of time, so like that kind of helps maybe explain that. Yeah, but there's...
My fear, and I guess it's alleviated if it really is a continuing story, but my fear is that, okay, the first movie they're going to beat Thanos, and then what? But if it's more of a continuing story, I could see them dragging that on.
I don't think they beat Thanos in the first movie at all.
Yeah, I don't think they could, because then where would your story go? But if it was supposed to be two separate stories and there's supposed to be a whole bunch of movies in between, if they didn't beat Thanos, then you'd kind of be like, well, what was the point of this?
Right.
So, okay, well, that's good to know.
So we'll see. We're excited. Breed and I have actually been going back and we've started watching all of the Phase 1 MCU movies. So like we've watched Iron Man, we just watched The Incredible Hulk. She's watching Thor tonight, and I recently kind of watched most of the Phase 1. So she's gonna watch Thor, then we're gonna watch Captain America: First Avenger, then we'll watch Avengers, and then we'll start into Phase 2, and continue on. But we're trying to watch all of the MCU movies, so we finish right before Avengers Infinity War.
Nice.
So that'll be fun.
I need to go back and watch a number of them.
So anyway, that's all I got for Rebel Intelligence. Are you tapped out as well?
I am tapped out.
Nice. Josh, last week we were here on the Fortress of Nerditude. I had Dev and Tyus on, had a great time with Dev, and we had a conversation about like why do we love superheroes? What is it about them? Is it, the optimism? Is it, they're kind of the fact that they're a replacement for like the Greek gods, kind of like the modern mythology, in America, some of these reasons. And then we talked about what superheroes like we identify with, and for what reason, or who's our favorite superhero. I know I don't even need to ask you because I know your answer, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to tell me. And I also did say that I wasn't going to bust balls and I wasn't going to nitpick about your answer. But I mean, you're on the show, so I just may anyway. But who would you say is a superhero you relate to and why? And then who's your favorite?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with my favorite first. My favorite is Superman.
Shut up. I know you're just messing with me.
I like him because he's so vulnerable and because he shows his softer side as soon as kryptonite comes around. I mean, I love a superhero that's not afraid to cry when you bring a little green glowing light in front of his eyes. So for that reason alone, I mean,
I like superheroes that actually have superpowers. not rich vigilantes that whine and complain because their mom died. Martha. Sorry, go ahead.
Mine is Batman. I can relate to him more than I can a alien, being that he's human. So, we both have that in common, unlike,
and nothing else.
I've always liked Batman. I do like Superman too. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate on Superman, but it is kind of fun to have that rivalry that they have and to jab back and forth with you about it. But Batman, to me, I've always liked the brooding type character. I like the dark suit. I like the fact that he's, going after thugs in the back alleys. That he's kind of doing the dirty work by night. And I actually do like the fact that he doesn't have superpowers because it does make you, not to say anybody could be Batman, but it makes him more relatable. So for those reasons, I've always been a fan of the Bat, and I feel like the Batman movies overall have been a lot more entertaining than definitely like the Superman movies. And there have been some good Superman ones. But I don't really care for the 1970s, early 80s Superman movies really much at all. And there have been some bad Batman movies too. I mean, everyone knows what you're saying when you say rubber nipples.
Right.
But as far as, I really like the Michael Keaton Batman. And even though a lot of people knock on Christian Bale and The Voice, I love the Christian Bale Batman movies. I really do. And, especially The Dark Knight is one of the absolute just best superhero movies, in my opinion, ever made, hands down.
Dark Knight was an amazing film. Batman Begins was good. I really liked that one. I did not care for The Dark Knight Rises at all. I'm with you, Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton's my Batman. Like, that's who I think of when I think of Batman. Not a fan of Val Kilmer, not a fan of George Clooney.
When I first saw the first trailer for Batman Begins, I remember seeing it and I was kind of almost annoyed. I'm like, we know who Batman is. What is this crap? And then I went and saw the movie, and Batman Begins is just excellent. I've seen that movie, gosh, I don't know how many times, probably 50 times. Definitely an excellent movie. I agree. The Dark Knight Rises was, probably the weakest of the three. I don't mind Bane. I don't mind The Voice. My biggest issue with the trilogy is every single movie, Gotham was in a different city.
Right.
If you look at
it, felt different.
Like in the third movie, I think it was set outside of Pittsburgh. The second movie was Chicago, and I don't remember if the first one was New York or where it was, but they've all been in different locations, and you can just tell, when in the third one, when it's obviously that they're playing in Pittsburgh, and you see that scene I should say, when they're playing football, that opening scene where the football players, you even had a couple guys that were actually on the Pittsburgh Steelers make cameos.
Yeah.
And so being a sports guy too, I saw that, and it was almost not quite like the fourth wall coming down, but it was just one of those things where I was like, all right, I get it. You're filming this in Pittsburgh.
Yep. No, I got it.
Same thing with the stuff in Chicago. They used the L. Yep. The L trains.
Yeah, and they were on Lower Wacker Drive for that big shootout when they're driving the trucks. I'm like, anyone from Chicago knows that that's Lower Wacker Drive.
Yeah. Which, I mean, having grown up outside Chicago, I thought that was cool. But at the same point, if you're just watching these movies and if you're just trying to believe that, that they're actually in Gotham, it kind of pulls you out of that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's go over to the old email, fortofnerd@gmail.com, and our good old friend Peter Christensen. He says, Dear Nerds, regarding Jon Favreau, when the first Iron Man came out, I thought directed by the guy who was dating Monica in Friends and broke up with her to fight in cages? He also played a doctor/astronaut in Deep Impact and Rudy's academic mentor in Rudy. Quite a varied career. Rudy.
And he had one of the weirdest claps too. If you go back and watch that movie, when he's getting all
weird,
aggressive with it.
Yes, exactly.
The aggressive slow clap is what that was.
He goes on to say, I felt the same about Rocky Balboa and waited a long time to watch Creed. It is so much better than Rocky Balboa. It's a real movie rather than a walk down memory lane. Have you watched Creed yet, Josh?
Yeah, Creed's great. And you know what? Rocky Balboa I thought was actually fun. I mean, yeah, it definitely is a lot of throwbacks, but I liked Rocky Balboa.
I'm with Peter. It's a trip down memory lane. It's less of a boxing movie,
it's totally really, it's not a boxing movie, but it's more just, about him aging and
right.
Just more about his life. But anyways, did you watch Creed then?
I haven't yet. I'm gonna watch it. I think I can get it on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or something right now.
I'm trying to think. We might own it. I'm not sure, but yeah, Creed was excellent.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. He says, I don't know what the first DVD I bought was, but the first DVD I watched was Legally Blonde. The first CD I bought was the Jurassic Park soundtrack, and the second was Green Jello before they had to change it to Green Jelly.
Nice.
So do you remember the first DVD you ever bought, Josh?
Yes, it was Sisters with Voices.
What?
I was like in third grade.
No, not CD, DVD.
Oh, I thought you said CD.
Wait. What is Sisters with Voices?
SWV.
Oh.
I get so weak in the knees, I can hardly speak. I lose all control.
Mine was Boys to Men. So,
but that was like third grade. I mean, I was still into like Paula Abdul and all that kind of crap.
That's fun. No, first DVD. Do you remember the first DVD you bought?
Oh, yes, I do. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Wow, that was your first one.
That was the first one I bought. Yeah, I was 21 years old, and is actually Steph and I bought it on our honeymoon in San Diego.
Wow.
So, yep.
Nice. So Peter goes to answer. He says, we love superheroes because they're not bound by the limits we have on our life. Someone who's so fast they can prevent bad things from happening, or strong enough to overcome evil forces, or whose anger is their power instead of the source of their problems. I'm a good driver, but I can't outdrive a submarine across a frozen ocean. Who hasn't wanted to be so smart and rich that they have no societal constraints? Sir, you can't swim in this fountain. I'm buying this hotel. People who are the best at something, particularly if they've achieved it rather than being given it, are inspiring. That's why we have the hero's journey and not the villain's. And he says, my favorite superhero was the Tick, because I never took myself seriously enough to identify with the more popular heroes. Happy 68th.
Wow, that was very articulate, very well written, And sadly to say, all that was going through my mind the whole time was, I get so weak in the knees, I can hardly speak.
That's too funny. Let's go over to Facebook, facebook.com/FordofNerd. Paul Calicote, he says, DC would have to be The Flash, because I have always been kind of slow. Marvel is definitely Spider-Man, because he seems to always be the underdog, and the superhero I think I identify with would be Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a guy who just wants to kick back, read comics, and play games, but can tighten that bandana and get serious when he needs to. Hashtag FON answers.
Nice.
Going over to Twitter, Delvin Cox at Delvin_Cox, home of the Delvin Cox Experience.
Delvin the man.
Says, Captain America, he always fights for the little guy and stands up for his beliefs, even if it causes him his life. Never back down from a challenge, even if the odds are against him. If it's the right thing to do, he's gonna do it. I like that. Like I said, I love Captain America. Animation fan at DSpin67 says, Batman. I grew up watching the 60s TV show. I liked Batman. He didn't have superpowers. He couldn't fly. He wasn't super strong. He did have smarts, though. He had the world's first man cave that was literally a cave. My only knock is his sidekick looked like a Keebler elf.
So, side note, I can't say I'm a huge fan of the Adam West Batman portrayal. I mean, it was entertaining, but I am a huge fan of Adam West.
Gotcha.
And I know he's since passed. There's a podcast I listen to called Reply All, where these two guys in New York City, and it's all about interesting and weird things that they find on the internet. And they had an episode where there was this really vague Adam West tweet that they were trying to figure out. They're trying to just basically break it down and decrypt it, find out what it meant. And so they actually got a hold of Adam West. And one of the things that really impressed me is that they were saying afterwards that Adam West was the nicest guy in the world, that, they talked to him for like half an hour and long after they were done interviewing, and he just treated them like they were family. And they actually had to call him back at one point, and he was just so gracious, no ego whatsoever about him. So for that reason alone, I know I'm rambling, but for that reason alone, I was just really impressed by Adam West, a guy that is, was crazy famous, the original Batman, but yet super humble. Just they almost described him as like just a nice grandpa.
I've heard from everyone that's ever known him or worked with him that basically like the guy you saw on the 1966 Batman show was really Adam West. Like he wasn't like really like trying to act a certain way, that he really was kind and like wanted to like, be helpful, and like he was just really like a great like And I've heard that from a ton of people. It's a shame that that he's obviously passed and that we don't have him. But like his family has said, he will always be the bright knight. There's been the dark knight, but he was the bright knight. The one that kind of stood out. It was a little brighter, a little shinier, a little more positive, and a little more
most definitely
stand up. But on staying on Twitter, Mike BC at Mike BC 1985 says, Batman. You don't need superpowers to be a superhero.
Nice. Yep. Totally agree.
Thank you so much, Super Friends, for answering our question of the week. We love interacting with you. We love having the ability to talk and to see, kind of how you look at some of these things. And so we appreciate that. Every week we'll ask you a question and we're going to put it out. It's going to be in all the normal places. Twitter at Ford of Nerd, Facebook, which is facebook.com/FordofNerd. You can reach us by email at fordofnerd@gmail.com, or you can call our phone number, which is 801-477-7687. Josh, how can our Super Friends help us out this week?
They can help us out by rating us on iTunes, because if you don't, I'll get so weak in the knees I can hardly speak. I lose all control and something takes over me.
I love that that's like the only SWV song you're singing.
And that's like the only part I remember.
What about like Waterfalls, man?
That's TLC.
Same difference.
Sisters with Voices, actually, one of the singers you might remember she was on Survivor a couple seasons back.
Yep.
She married Eddie George. So yeah.
Very, very
Fun
nice.
fact.
Josh, let me ask you a question. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit off the podcast. You haven't seen the new Tomb Raider movie yet, have you?
I have not yet, but I want to.
What about it makes you want to go see it?
Okay. I don't think I wouldn't go into it thinking it's going to be an amazing movie, but you ever have those movies where even though you watch it and the critical side of you is like, this is not a good movie, but yet you still kind of like the popcorn movies where you're still entertained, still enjoy it. You know, you might be able to point out lots of flaws. That's kind of what I'm thinking is going to be the case with this movie. And maybe it's because the previous Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie, weren't critically acclaimed, but yet they were still fun. So that's kind of the way I'm going into it. But then also the main reason I really want to see it is because I love the two latest Tomb Raider games. They kind of rebooted the whole series. I don't know what it was, maybe 5-6 years ago with a game just called Tomb Raider. And then a couple of years ago with a game called Rise of the Tomb Raider. And now they have a third one coming out later this year called, I think it's Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
The Dark Tomb Raider Rises.
Yeah, the Dark Tomb Raider Rises, yep. But anyways, I absolutely love those games. Now, the story on them is not great, which makes you kind of wonder why they'd even make a movie that the trailers look almost scene for scene like they cut out of that first reboot.
Right.
Which, I've heard people that have seen it that say it's not exactly the case. But what they're showing you in the trailer, I think, is really trying to appeal to fans of the latest Tomb Raider series, from her jumping over the waterfall and getting stabbed by a tree branch, to her jumping off the wing of an airplane. These are all things that you see in the game. So I don't know if the movie's going to really be good, but maybe it's just more curiosity is why I want to see it.
So I watched so first of all, let me preface this by saying I played the first Tomb Raider game, kind of like the rebooted Tomb Raider. I've played some of the older ones. But I played the first rebooted Tomb Raider, and I thought the controls and like the gameplay was pretty good. But the story to me was so freaking boring. I just could not get into that game. I basically just mainlined the game. I think I did like one tomb total just to do a tomb, because the tombs in that game were optional. Like previous games, like you had to do the tombs in order to progress with the games.
See, and I'm polar opposite of you, and I'm normally not the guy in video games that is the completionist where you have to go and pick up every artifact and 100% the game, so to speak. But that game, I did 100% it. I've played it, I want to say 3 times all the way through.
Wow.
All the tombs, all the artifacts, all the GPS points, everything. I did them all. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And I know a lot of times it gets compared to the Uncharted video games because they do have very similar gameplay. I think the gameplay is better in Tomb Raider, but Uncharted is the far superior one when it comes to story.
Absolutely. I'll agree with you there, because there are some parts, especially in like the first Uncharted game, where the gameplay is not janky, but it's not very smooth in some parts, especially when you have to like lean around cover and fire. I didn't really care for it. Anyway, I didn't care enough for that first Tomb Raider game that I haven't played the other ones that have come out, or I haven't played the second one. I know the third one's getting ready to come out, right?
Right.
I didn't play the second one. I have no interest in it because the first one, the story was just so bloody boring. And for me, like, gameplay can be all right, but in a linear progression-based game, I want a good story. I want something that's going to hook me to kind of keep me there. So when I saw the preview for it, I looked at it and went like, this just looks like the story from the first game, and I thought that was really, really boring, so I'm not going to go see that. Now, of course, Tomb Raider just opened, and I would have thought that it would have done probably pretty big business. Here's the deal. It made $23.5 million its first weekend. It didn't even win the first spot. The first spot went to Black Panther, which made $27 million that weekend. And of course, that now raises Black Panther to like $605 million domestically. Like it's still like making crazy money. It's like $1.2 billion worldwide. And so like Black Panther's just continuing to rake in money. And I would have thought for sure, even though it's like it doesn't really appeal to me, but I would have thought for sure the Tomb Raider movie would have outperformed Black Panther after it's been out since it came out like in early February. It's been out for well over a month and a half.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things probably contribute. I mean, maybe it's not a great movie and maybe it just won't do well overall, period. But you probably have the casual fans that are like, oh, we've already had a Tomb Raider. We've already had 2 Tomb Raider movies, right? So to them, they're probably saying, well, what's this going to be that's anything different? And really, they haven't, at least from the trailers and whatever, they haven't really given you any reason to believe it's going to be anything different other than just, a new cast that's just rebooted. So there's probably that. And then there's also the fact that Black Panther's just a phenomenal movie and is just killing it. Now I know it's been out for a little while, so you can say, well, yeah, it's not, it's not in its first couple weeks either, but
right. It's
probably a little bit of both. I mean, like I said, I don't expect the new Tomb Raider to be any sort of excellent movie. I definitely want to see it though, and it'll probably be one that even though it probably isn't a good movie, I'm sure I'll still enjoy it.
So what's interesting to me about this is I was kind of looking at some information is that on like Cinema Score exit polls, like fans, people that went to go see the movie coming out, they gave it like a B grade. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it like a 50%, which is obviously failing. And then fans on Rotten Tomatoes have given it a 70%, which is about a C. Here's the really interesting part, though. This is what I thought was really interesting. Most people say that the first Tomb Raider with Angelina Jolie was the better of the two, and that the second one, Cradle of Life, was pretty bad. This Tomb Raider movie basically made about the same money that the Tomb Raider Cradle of Life made its opening weekend. And so it's kind of like on par with that one. So while I want to see a very good, a very well done, I want to see a very well done video game movie, I don't think this is going to be it. And I think this is kind of where, people in the video game world, say that there's the curse of doing a movie based on a video game, because none of them seem to ever really do like big business or really be that great. Like we've had some real stinkers of movies.
Well, I guess it depends on what you consider a success. Critically, I don't think there have really been many that have been critical successes. There have been ones that have made, decent amount of revenue, and then also ones that have probably, as a result, sold a lot of merchandise, whether it's video games, toys, t-shirts, whatever. So, I mean, obviously there's enough of them that have done well enough financially that they keep making more. But yeah, critics first off are never going to be, I should say never. Generally speaking, critics aren't going to rave over action movies. And this, to me, even though it's not quite summer yet, this is kind of your typical summer popcorn movie. So I'm not shocked by when you're saying that critics haven't been high on it, but fans, there have been more that have come out liking it than haven't, even if it's not been overwhelming. That's kind of what I would expect. Something I was just thinking about too, and I don't mean to be insensitive about this, but with the original Tomb Raider, speaking of the old, not the movie, but the old video games, Lara Croft was known for being really busty. Right. And then you cast someone as Angelina Jolie, who kind of fits that role. And like I said, I'm not trying to be crude or whatever, but I do have to wonder if there's people back in the day that maybe weren't big fans of the game, or maybe didn't even know what they're seeing, but it's like, hey, it's Angelina Jolie running around.
Sure. The eye candy factor.
Right. So maybe there's that, and I don't know what her name, Alicia Vikander. Yeah. I don't know much about her. I don't know if I've even seen a movie that she's been in before, but she might not have that same pull that Angelina Jolie had. And so there might be some of that too, where, maybe more casual fans are just, saying,
I've heard
who is this?
I've heard
What
from
is
a
this
lot
movie?
of people that they said that she was actually really good in the movie and like they wanted to see more of her, but that the rest of the characters really didn't do much for them, that the story was kind of boring, but that they really liked her as Lara
Right.
Croft.
And what's interesting about that is that's kind of the same reaction that first rebooted video game got, is where everyone was saying Lara's character was interesting. All the side characters
Totally
were
forgettable.
Were just, kind of throwaways, which I agree with. I mean, like I said, we've already said that, but the story wasn't really strong in that. But at least her character in the video game was well done. The voice acting on it was really good. So I don't know. I do wonder though if there is a little bit of an eye candy factor, and that's not to say that this Alicia Vikander or whatever her name is, not to say she's not a beautiful lady, but maybe it's not getting the bro crowd as much as Angelina Jolie would.
Sure. I mean, that's a possibility. Do you believe that there is a video game movie curse?
I wouldn't say curse. I would just say that there's issues with taking a video game into a movie. When you play, at least video games nowadays, when you play a story-driven game, even if it's an action game, a game like Tomb Raider, a game like Uncharted, a game like The Last of Us, that's going to take you, 15 to 20 hours to get through it. And not to say that the whole time is dialogue like a movie would be, but there's a lot of cutscenes. You have a lot of character development that goes on over those 15 to 20 hours that then you're trying to take and you're trying to cram it into a movie. And not only that, but if you're a fan of a video game, it's an interactive experience. Whereas
Right.
in the movie, you're not participating at all. You're just there as a bystander. So I think that's part of it. And then I also think another part that can't really be understated is when you play something, when you play a video game and you see these characters, you have someone. It's not like reading a book where you have to imagine what they might look like. If you read a book and then you go see a movie, I think there's a higher likelihood of it being more believable. Not to say, that it could totally crash and fail, but you haven't actually seen these characters before. Where if you're playing The Last of Us and you know who Joel and Ellie are,
Right.
and you're used to, the voice actors and everything, then you go and you see a movie and it's different people. Sometimes there's a little bit of separation. I think it's the same thing like we talked about a number of episodes back with the new Solo film. The same issue that I'm having with that is I see the guy who's supposed to play Han and I'm like, that's not Han Solo.
Right.
He
It
doesn't
doesn't feel
he
like
doesn't
it's
seem
you.
to have the same
Yeah.
swagger, So I don't know. I think that's always going to be a problem with video games and movies, especially now as graphics have gotten so much better and as video games are so much more story driven than they ever were when it was like Mario Go Save the Princess.
Right.
If you're listening to this podcast and you're not much of a gamer and that's what you view video games as is, hey, let's go save the princess. A lot's changed. They've definitely, there still is that, but there's so many more stories that are out there.
So let me ask you this. On your list of all-time stinker movie video games, what would you say are probably like your personal like top 3 all-time like worst adaptations of a video game to a movie?
Oh, that is tough. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was one
Check.
that I really, I mean, I can't buy the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal is a Persian.
Right.
That was just, I don't know.
I thought that movie was horrendous, but like surprisingly enough, that movie made like $336 million.
Yeah, and a lot of people consider it to be one of the better ones, but Mario Brothers movie was pretty horrendous.
Check. That's horrible.
I'm trying to think what
for me that movie was horrible also because it didn't feel like anything that had come from the Mario video games at all. Like there was like, oh, here's a guy named Mario and here's a guy named Luigi and here's a guy named Koopa, or but that was kind of like it, right? I mean,
right. Yeah, and a lot of them I honestly haven't seen. I haven't seen the Doom movies. I haven't seen the Resident Evil movies. Now, I've heard the Resident Evil movies are very, very different than the video games. They've done well enough that they've made 1 billion of them, it feels like. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there have been any that I would rave about. As a kid, I really liked Mortal Kombat. But it's not a good movie.
It's not a good movie.
I mean, you go back and watch it now, and you could tell the budget was pretty low on that one. But hey, I think that still made decent money. And as a kid, I loved it because it was Mortal Kombat. They're fighting to the death. But yeah, they've all kind of been, somewhat stinkers.
I definitely would agree with you. Super Mario Brothers probably the low point for me. Prince of Persia, I just couldn't stand that movie. Mortal Kombat, I was super excited to see it like in 1995 when it came out, and I was famously I told Steve it was like the greatest movie ever because I wanted him to go see it, and he's like, "What the freak? That was crap!" And I was like, "Yeah."
Did you ever see the follow-up to it? I think it was Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I never saw it.
I never saw it.
I had the VHS of Mortal Kombat, and sadly, I watched that a ton as a teenager, even though it wasn't good. And I knew it wasn't good, but same thing. It was.
Do you remember the Double Dragon movie?
Vaguely.
Ooh, not good. Not good at all. So, I mean, there's been some really bad ones. What would you say has been like really good? Like, what would you say are like a few of your top like good movies that were based on a video game?
Once again, I wouldn't say these were good, but I did like the first Tomb Raider movie with Angelina Jolie, and I actually like the second one as well. Once again, you watch them and you know they're not good, so I don't want anyone to think, oh, Josh thought those were good movies. No, I didn't think they were good,
right?
But it was just kind of dumb fun. But yeah, I can't really think of a whole lot that really stick out. I mean, just a lot of forgettable ones.
For me, I'd maybe say the first Tomb Raider because that one kind of does stick out to me a little bit. And then maybe I'd also say they did a Final Fantasy movie, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which kind of takes place after the events of Final Fantasy VII. And I really kind of like that. I mean, it's not great, but I mean, personally, I really liked it because I love Final Fantasy VII. But that one wasn't too bad. But like other than that, there's not been a lot. Now, the flip side of this is that there's been movies that are based or movies kind of about video games, but not actually based on a video game that have been really good. So like there's been some really good like documentaries, like for instance, King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. Like that,
right.
That movie, I love that. It's, kind of this documentary. There was one called Chasing Ghosts Beyond the Arcade, which is kind of like the golden age of arcade games, like, the 1980s. And I've got that. That's really, really good. Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah. I was just say Wreck-It Ralph. I mean, if you want to count that, that's probably the best one, even though it's not really based off a video game. Would you count Tron?
Yeah. I would say Tron is a movie kind of about video games. Yeah.
I mean, I love Tron, and I actually really liked the Tron. What is it? Tron Legacy.
Yep.
I really liked that. I know that was another one that kind of was probably considered a bust.
And for pure nostalgia, I love The Wizard. And
yeah, The Wizard was cool. Even though talk about product placement, that was just.
Get your power gloves off her.
Yeah, that was just a 2-hour commercial. For Nintendo. But yeah, The Wizard was good. Did you see Assassin's Creed?
No, I didn't.
I didn't hate it. But I saw it in the movie theater and it kind of was forgettable. I would probably watch it again, but if, it definitely wasn't one of Michael Fassbender's better movies.
Right.
Now, I did see one recently, and this was a short. It's like 30 minutes long. It's on Amazon Prime. I don't know if you're a fan of Far Cry.
I've never played them.
Okay. Far Cry 5 comes out, I think, in a week. And anyways, on Amazon Prime, there's a 30-minute short called Far Cry Eden's Gate.
Uh-huh.
And it's using the same people, the actors that are in the video game, the voice actors. They're actually the actors in this little short, and it's supposed to kind of give you the backstory of the video game. And it was actually really well done. It's about a cult in Montana that kind of has this just charismatic leader that this girl joins a cult, and her brother's trying to get her out of it. So they're trying to infiltrate the cult and find a way to get her out. And of course they get busted, and I don't know, really well done. It was only 30 minutes. It's not exactly what you consider in the realm of a movie that you'd see in the theater, but that was actually well done.
Huh. Let me ask you this, Josh, because I know that there's some upcoming movies that are based on video game franchises. There's the Rampage movie that's coming out with The Rock, which is based on like the old Rampage game, which seems a little, it's
a little thin. I mean, basically, it's just monsters that smash up.
I mean,
buildings.
if they made a Battleship
Godzilla
movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Battleship.
Yeah. So
geez. I never saw that one, and don't ever want to see it.
So they're gonna make a Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
I have not heard that. Really?
Yep.
Like animated or
don't know.
It's got to be animated.
All I know. And then of course, like the one that probably you and I would probably be most excited for is they're gonna make an Uncharted movie based on the Uncharted video game series.
Well, I know that, and I know they've also talked about making, and I don't know if it's ever been greenlit, but a Last of Us movie as well. I know there's been talks.
No green light on The Last of Us yet. So here's my thing. Okay, let's talk about the Uncharted. We love those. I know you and I both love that game series. What do you think needs to happen in order to make a movie like that successful, both critically and in the box office?
I'll want to go see it. I don't think it will be a success. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier is if you've played the Uncharted games, there's 4 mainline games. And if you played the 4 games, you know that the voice of Nathan Drake is Nolan North.
Right.
Right? And so if someone else is playing him and it's a different voice, you're immediately going to have that disconnect.
What if someone looks like him and Nolan North dubs in all the lines? Does that work?
No. Man, that would talk about a train wreck. I think a guy like Mark Wahlberg could probably, pull off the character of an older Nathan Drake. But I just don't know that there's going to be anyone that's going to quite fit the role quite right. And the video games have so much story already in them. Is it just going to be a rehash? Is it going to be condensed down? Because there's probably a lot more than 3 hours of story over the course of those 4 video games.
So here's what I think. A video game like this, right, where you've got 4 games, and I mean, there's some amazing games, right? I mean, all of them are great. First one's probably my least favorite of all of them, but it's still a good game. I think if a movie like this is going to be successful, what they need to do is they need to find a way to tell an original story while incorporating some of the backstory and the characters with, some subtle Easter eggs and some subtle nods that the fans of the series would appreciate. But like I think with this Tomb Raider game this Tomb Raider movie, which I haven't seen, but it looks like a direct adaptation from that rebooted Tomb Raider game. I didn't care for that game. I didn't care for that. I mean, I really didn't care for that story, so I don't want to go see it. If it's just a rehash, I'm not going to care for that either. So for me, I think if you can make it different enough that it gives fans of the video games a reason to go see it, plus you make it exciting for non-fans, because realistically, an Uncharted game is like Indiana Jones. It's not Indiana Jones,
Right.
but it's that kind of like action adventure. You're searching for an idol, or you're searching for some sort of like mythical city, or, something along those lines. And you've got, protagonists that are, a strong protagonist that you can identify with. It's, a guy you really want to root for. And then you got some antagonists that you're just like, oh gosh, I hate these people. Just, that would be great. I would like to see that. But if they're going to take directly from a video game and make it, I think it should be the fourth game. Ignore the first three, just make a movie based on the fourth game, because I think that had the strongest story out of all of them. And there's a lot they could do there with, kind of the pirates and, all of that kind of stuff in the Caribbean that would be better than some of the stuff in the second movie with Shambhala and all that stuff.
Right. Well, and the fourth video game really has a lot of tugs on the heartstrings as far as his relationship with his wife and kind of going behind her back to go out on this adventure with his brother.
Right.
So I could, story-wise, I agree. That's probably the strongest one. But I do like your idea of it being kind of a little bit of its own story. The problem is, if there had only been one Uncharted game, maybe you'd say there's so many more stories we can do. Where you've had four, there's been cutscenes that have gone back to his childhood. They're,
right.
Really young Nathan Drake, teenage Nathan Drake, young adult Nathan Drake, Drake at the end of his, thieving and collecting career.
Salvage.
Salvage, yeah. Whatever you want to call it. So, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm a sucker. I would probably go and see it. I'd probably still enjoy it. But as far as to make any of these movies, just a big critical success and a huge success at the box office, I don't know. I don't think it's a curse. I think it's just you're taking one style being a video game where the story can be told over a long period of time, and you're trying to put it in another just a different format in a movie, and I don't think there's always just a great direct translation.
I agree with you, and I do think it is an issue. I hope we can get a good video game translated into a movie. I hope it can be done, and I hope whoever does it well enough that it kind of sets maybe a mold for others to follow, so we can get some other ones that'll be really good. And if it's going to happen, man, I hope it happens with the Uncharted movie, because that would be the one I would be rooting for. Let me ask you a question, Josh. This is going to be our question of the week for the super friends out there. If you could choose a video game franchise to be adapted to a movie, what would be your number one pick?
I would probably say Gears of War. It's not exactly as masterful of a story as something like The Last of Us. But it's set on a foreign planet. It would be just a fun popcorn summer movie flick, kind of. I was gonna say kind of like Doom, but Doom wasn't a good movie,
right?
But as far as just it's just gonna be your average us versus the world. Let's go take down these demons. So I don't know. I'm a huge Gears of War fan, so I think that could be fun, and it's already, over the top enough that it could make a summer blockbuster.
Okay. I would say The Last of Us. I think that would be the one I would most want to see. But if I'm going to put that aside, though, because I think that because that game is already so cinematic that it's almost like a movie at times.
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be the easiest to translate because it is such a great story.
Right.
But I think fans of the game would struggle with,
Maybe, because it depends if they're going to tell the story from the game. If you play the game, you know how it ends, you know what happens. But for me, I would like to see a Splinter Cell movie. Bring Sam Fisher, get Michael Ironsides to do the voice, because you never really see Sam Fisher, at least in the first game, and in most of those games. That would be a really cool, because he'd have all the espionage, all the stealth. You could couch it in kind of a today's environment. with all the espionage, and you could have it, all the like political conflict and whatnot. I think a Splinter Cell movie could be really cool, and it wouldn't have to stick so formulaic to the video game. It'd be a good spinoff.
It would, and I think some of these, thinking back on Gears of War, I think they would almost be better suited instead of going the movie route, of almost going the animated route, kind of like Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah.
Where you could have it be, 30 minutes, 20 some episodes. That would almost fit the video game format more, where you could stretch out the story and really tell it over a longer course of time than just cram it all in. I think something like, Gears of War or, anything really would be kind of fun to have that Star Wars Rebels format.
Well, I like that. So, Super Friends, that's the question to you. Which video game or video game series would you like to see adapted into a movie? And you can answer me at all the usual places. Twitter @FortofNerd, Facebook.com/FortofNerd, FortofNerd@gmail.com, or 1-810-477-7687. Josh, thank you for coming back again and hanging out here in the Fortress of Nerditude. Where can all the Super Friends find you out there in the internet sphere?
You can find me on Twitter @MTTG Street Team. Or you can also find me on YouTube, where I do a YouTube series every other Thursday called Raising a Gamer, where me and my son Cool Knight will play a game together and then talk about it.
Which I highly recommend that YouTube series. I love it. Well, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude, where to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you. Always.